Yet another benchmarking worthy title. Assassin's Creed Odyssey finally released, and today we're going to be benchmarking it with 8 pretty popular budget graphics cards and with a system that actually makes sense for our testing. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome to Zach's Tech Turf. Today we're going to be benchmarking the new Assassin's Creed Odyssey with some budget graphics cards. And if you're new here and you want to see more benchmarking videos like the Forza Horizon 4 video that I literally just got done testing right before this one, then hit that subscribe button down below and also that notification bell. That way you never miss an episode. But yeah, let's start benchmarking. As usual, today we're going to be using our normal lineup of 8 budget graphics cards, which I know a lot of you guys are rocking. These cards are the GT 1030, GTX 660 Ti, GTX 750 Ti, GTX 960, GTX 1050 Ti, GTX 1060, the R7 and finally the RX 460. Also, like usual, our testing rig is this Dell Optiplex, which is rocking an i5 3470 clocked at 3.2 GHz, has 8 GB of DDR3 RAM, and I have Odyssey installed on a Kingston 120GB SSD. This Dell Optiplex is a perfect testing platform for these GPUs because instead of testing it with a current gen i7 way overpowered PC, this is something that actually makes sense and you would actually pair with these graphics cards. To kick off these benchmarks, here is a chart showing every card with the exact same settings, 1080p and low. Just like last year's Assassin's Creed Origins, Odyssey is a terribly unoptimized game and we couldn't even hit 30 FPS with all of these cards at such low settings. For those of you that can't accept 30 FPS when gaming, the benchmarks that you're about to see for each graphics card are the settings required to hit that target 50 to 60 FPS mark, which as you guys know is what I always recommend. The first card up was the GT 1030, and to get it anywhere close to our target 50 FPS mark, I had to knock the settings all the way down to 720p and low. That unfortunately wasn't enough because I still only averaged 42 frames per second. Keep in mind that 42 FPS is certainly playable, it's just not a smooth 60 FPS experience. Next up was the GTX 660 Ti, and here I also had to keep the settings at 720p and low, but at least we averaged a nice 54 FPS. Just last week in the Forza Horizon 4 benchmarking video, the GTX 660 Ti was performing very well, not so much the case here with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. The next card up was the 750 Ti. I actually just made a video comparing the 660 Ti and 750 Ti head to head by the way, and also in 720p and low settings I only managed to average an FPS average of 47. This is the first time I think that I've ever seen the 660 Ti do that much better than the 750 Ti, which is pretty bizarre. Moving on to our more capable graphics cards, the GTX 960 was up next, and here I could finally get into the 1080p resolution, but still with low settings I got an average FPS of 52. As usual, the GTX 1050 Ti followed up next, and with the same settings again, 1080p and low, I averaged 51 FPS, which is just one lower than the 960. This is usually what we see with these benchmarking videos. Moving on, the GTX 1060 3GB GPU was up next, and here I could actually get out of the low settings and bump it up to 1080p and medium. With this setup I was able to average right at that 50 FPS mark, but take a look at the very poor 0.1% low. Moving on to our AMD cards for today, I just picked up another AMD card to add to the mix by the way, please continue being patient, and with the R7 I had to crank the settings back down to 720p and low for a 39 FPS average. Finally, the RX 460 was up, and this was definitely the most odd result out of all of them. In 720p and low settings yet again, I was only able to get an average of 41 FPS, which is just 2 FPS more than the R7 360. I don't think I've ever seen such a poorly optimized game because this result is just mind-blowing. Well, there you have it. That wraps up my benchmarking video for the incredibly tough to run Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Now feel free to head on over to one of these 2 videos if you haven't seen them yet, and definitely hit that subscribe button because next week we're not done benchmarking. You don't want to miss those videos.